Welcome to the AI Revenue Loop, your source for practical AI insights from revenue leaders who are making it happen. All right, so we have Marcy here. So Marcy is a former coworker of mine, and she's currently the CMO of View. Marcy, do you want to share with us a little bit about about yourself?
So I'm a CMO of View. We are an aerial imagery and data company. So we have a fleet of planes. We fly those planes over the United States and Canada, and we capture about 94% of the populated area in those areas. And then we extract the imagery and insights from those images. And then we work with partners and customers in a variety of different industries. So insurance carriers, solar installers, roofers, government entities that all need intelligence on properties and structures and assets that they have that are in those images.
That's awesome. I know you in Dodge, right? And
yeah.
You start out with branding, right? When you first start after college, and then you do a dramatic shift to performance marketing. Can you tell me more about how what's the path like to get to CMO and what's in the future?
Yeah, there's like a ton of different paths that you could take to be a CMO. I was really single-minded from the very beginning. I chose my college based on a marketing major. So I went to Syracuse University, which is still known for a top school in advertising on the East Coast, with the eye of working in New York City after graduating. So I attended Syracuse, graduated, and I graduated at a time where there unfortunately were no jobs available. So I had to figure things out, right? So I moved back home to Dallas, and I got a job with Tracy Locke, which is an advertising firm in Dallas, and it's very well known. They represent Fortune 500 clients. I worked on accounts like Bombardier, FlexJet, Fetzer Wines, Pizza Hut International, and we did amazing things. Now, I didn't make very much money at all, so that's one thing to note, but I learned a lot. So I started out really not understanding the words people would say to me in the workplace and just memorizing them and repeating those words to other people.
Yeah.
So you got to talk about that
totally
level.
Yeah.
That level of understanding what's happening. But I built up this really functional knowledge of how you build a campaign, and you build it for customer engagement and recall. And that was, essentially everything that we did. We did commercials and billboards and print advertisements.
Okay.
Then digital marketing started coming around. So it started with these things called eye blasters, which, if you remember, early 2000s, you would dial up to your AOL internet, right?
Yep.
And go
I remember those sounds.
Yahoo.com potentially. Yep. And then a banner would take over your whole screen. And so we started selling those to our clients. And the metrics on that were abysmal, right? So much in the same way metrics you get for podcasts these days is very similar corollary. So you would get impressions and general metrics around who was looking at your ads, but there was a ton of fraud around it.
Yep.
They would show your ads on sites that you did not want your brand associated with. And so I, as an AE at an advertising agency, I would request reports of where these ads were displaying and then literally go through every single placement, redline the ones that we refused to pay for, and we would iterate like that over the years until it started getting better and better.
That's a lot of work.
It was a lot of work, right? It was obviously sort of like the future, right? And in the beginning, nobody wanted to touch it because it was not as sexy or interesting as flying to LA and shooting a $2 million commercial. But it was something that you could sort of create and own and be of value, because you could easily become a subject matter expert because there wasn't a whole lot to know at the time, right? Mm-hmm. So one of my clients at 7-Eleven went on maternity leave, and I was brought in to stand for her. Okay. And so I was willing and able and wanted to take on that position because I knew that I could make more money on the client side. Mm-hmm. My first job at Tracy Locke, I made $25,000.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I needed to make more money.
Yeah.
So at 7-Eleven, we did a whole slate of other new experiences that were interesting. And I continued to sort of expand my understanding of ways that you could engage and touch customers. And work there took me to Sears Holdings. And from there, I got a connection, brought me to Amazon. And then sort of everything exploded from there, right? So just dramatic shift in sort of how you work and how you achieve results and even your position in the market. And all of those experiences enabled me to take a chance on a startup. And so that's where you and I met. I
Yep.
moved
Yep.
from Seattle to Austin and was number 3 at this startup called Dosh. You're sitting around a table and wondering, what do I do? Because I have everything to do. So what do I do now and what do I not do? And they're really hard decisions about what next step is going to get me to where I need to be ultimately. It was a very fun experience, and now I will say it was also very hard.
Yep.
But it's one of those situations, like all the former situations that I just laid out, where you step into something and having that mindset of, I don't know exactly what the right answer is, but I'm excited to figure it out and solve this problem. And that attitude is what propels people in their career, right? So you want to be the
100%.
person that your boss sees as being a problem solver, not afraid to admit what you don't know, and willing to keep pushing until you figure out the answer.
100%. So you are in 1% of marketer that get to be a CMO. What do you think would be like underappreciated strategy for marketer out there to get to where you are, that people from looking from the outside would not understand or would not appreciate it?
So if you break down that stat further into male CMOs versus female CMOs, you might be a little bit more shocked. It's
Okay.
primarily male CMOs.
So if that 1% is
Yeah.
primarily male CMO.
Yeah.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
that's a function of just time, right?
Yep.
So people get promoted to leadership roles because they're good at what they do, number one, but also they build connection with somebody else in a more senior role. And it's just really natural that people look to some people that look like themselves when they're thinking about
Yep.
who they're going to promote. So it's all about relationships, and that starts by building trust, right? And so the best people I've had in my career, best advocates I've had in my career, have been males that have seen the possibility for me, have given me assignments that I have achieved, right? And built equity for the company. And so thinking about your role as one that is solely focused on adding value to the company and then looking for ways to do that and prove that you're doing that, that's how you're going to get there.
And being in a very, very rare crop of a female CMO, right? I'm sure you are very passionate about championing for women in the workplace, right? One of your best very relevant story is your daughter Genevieve. She's the only one in the minor league baseball, right? And then
I mean, not minor league, little league.
Oh, little league.
She's
Yeah.
not to the minors
Oh, yeah,
yet.
yeah. And then she was when she came at bat, people were deriding her, but then one bat that hit the ball over the pitcher, and then everyone shut up, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly the same metaphor for life, right? Like, it doesn't really matter what people think of you, you just have to prove them wrong.
Yep.
And you can either be worried about how you're marginalized as a person and all these things stacked against you, but the reality is you're not going to shift that.
Yep.
None of that is in your control. You can only control what you have at your disposal, which is you and your actions and your emotions about it, right?
100%.
So
Yeah.
so I'm passionate about that, but I do not think that people should be standing on that daily in the workplace. I don't think it helps them whatsoever.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Focusing on what you can control,
Yeah.
and yeah, you touch on on emotions, right? That's a very important aspect. You've been in Amazon, which is known for very stressful working experience, and then Dosh, which is a startup. And I remember when we got to #1 in the App Store, everything was on fire. So any advice on how people in that environment can focus on what they can control, but also keep their emotion in checks.
One thing I've discovered about myself is I'm really good in a crisis.
Okay.
And I don't know that you can learn that. I think one of the things that I think about when I'm in situations like that specific situation at Dosh, it was someone in the company had made this analogy that the plane was flying, the landing gear had fallen off, we only have half an engine working, and all the customers are panicking, you know? And like my job was to play the role of the steward and ensure everyone that, you know, the oxygen masks are working.
Mm-hmm.
You should put them on yourself before anybody else. There's nothing to worry about. We have command and control of this airplane, and we will get you home safely. And everybody else sort of was assigned different roles. You know, so the pilot, that engineering, was assigned figure out what's not working, triage it, and make it work, you know?
Yep.
And once everyone sort of had that assigned role that we could focus on, it just became, the clarity was there, you know? So all the other noise sort of goes away, and then you can really focus. The other fun tip I have, it was handed to me by my mom, who was a pioneer of her own right. And she led a hospital of 200 employees, had 16 different budget lines, was the first of her skill set to ever get the degree that she got. And she was one of the nation's 4 leaders in serving medical facilities, mental health facilities. And so she had to really check her own emotions and play with the boys as well, right? And one of the things that I remember from a very young age that she taught me when I was really worked up about something and it wasn't benefiting me, she said, Marcy, when you feel like you want to cry, you got to take your hand and put your fingernails in it and crush as hard as you can to create pain so that you don't think about crying anymore.
Oh, wow.
So a very dramatic example of what she meant by that is find another outlet for it, you know, so that you can focus on the problem at hand. That tip does work, though, if you do feel like crying.
All right. Oh.
So you should use that next time.
Yeah, I will use that next time. Maybe right after this recording. I can't believe I asked that question. But anyway, in one of your interview, right, one of the biggest challenge of marketer at own company is picking the channel, right? Because marketing doesn't have infinite budget that they can just play and own the channels, right? So how do you go about doing that at Eagle Views, and how have you seen like the AI wave, how has it impact that?
So I think this is a question that every marketer is asking themselves every day right now. But the thing is, I found is that marketers who believe they can replicate the same playbook over and over again don't last too long, because the game is constantly changing, right? Just like digital marketing came into the forefront, Google became a big player, and now we have Gen AI. You have to constantly be evaluating where the pieces are on the board. Not only the pieces, but where the board is sitting in your environment. So like your customers have a completely different perspective and set of feelings today than they did yesterday or will tomorrow. So your playbook will not, the playbook that you used yesterday will not work today. It might work tomorrow, but you need to constantly be reevaluating that. And I like to run experiments, right? And figure out, play small bets based on available data, experience combined with qualitative feedback that we're getting from the customers and or internal stakeholders, and run those experiments to get data back on performance. And then you can have a very functional conversation with people based on that data that's not emotional, right? So we don't have to, no longer do you really need to argue about what's true anymore based on feeling or experience. You can say, you can present the data, you took in all of their feedback, you ran the experiment, here's the data, here's what worked and didn't work. And the discussion moves on from there into where we go next. So just like everything else, a marketer has to constantly be learning, and you need to love it. A lot of people will fall into this trap of fear-based living where they're worried that Gen AI is going to take their job, and so they just pretend it doesn't exist. And that's the opposite of how you should act, because like we talked about before, your leaders are looking to you to place bets and drive value for the company. If Gen AI is a up and coming technology and there's opportunity for you to leverage it to add value to the company, then you should be doing that on behalf of the company. And you can, because it's so nascent, you can become the subject matter expert in that. And then you intrinsically added value to you and your role and for the company. And so I think it's fun. I think, we have how we're looking at it internally is we had a goal for how many Gen AI companies and technologies we are going to evaluate and then implement. And we had that by function. And some of it, turns out, maybe the technology is not ready for that yet. And for marketing, we found there's tons available that we've implemented last year and this year, and the results have been significant productivity gains, and we've been able to increase our value to the company with less CapEx investment. So that's just like the ideal world for a PE-backed company like ours, and really any company. They're looking for you to grow while spending less, and that's what Gen A enables you to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would be your favorite use case of AI or favorite AI tools that your team have used and see significant improvement?
Simply put, using Gen AI tools for writing has been a complete game changer. That's one of the areas where it just more evolved. I think also in the realm of creating and editing video and collateral, that's also been great. I've used it for small things like creating logos for hackathons that
Yeah,
would have taken cycles before,
yeah,
and I was able to do it myself in about 5 minutes, which is huge for
yeah.
productivity gain. I think your company also obviously is something that we're really excited about. The idea that Gen A can solve a huge pain point that would obviously take place of a huge headcount investment, and it's not taking anyone's job. That job isn't being done today. That's where it makes the most logical sense to apply something like Gen AI.
That's awesome. So you mentioned that not taking any one job, and so that's the elephant in the room of people that are afraid of Gen AI, right? Is AI gonna take my job? So you seem to think that that's not the case, and can you just elaborate more on that?
So I think it will take some people's jobs.
Hmm.
I mean, technology has always taken people's jobs. The challenge is like, how are you going to adapt
Hmm.
and embrace it, and your job will change, into something that utilizes it. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. They may become sentient and we're all dead. I don't know. But what I do know is if we don't look at the technology that's coming, evaluate it, and adopt what works, then you're going to lose your job anyway.
Yeah, 100%. And that's true with mobile, that's true with internet, and that's going to be true with AI as
Yeah.
well, right? One of the things that you mentioned is you start from branding, go to performance, and now you are focusing on tippy top of the funnel content, right? So what are those form of content that you investing in?
Well, to be clear, I'm focusing on all three of those areas.
Oh, okay,
You just like add them to your stack, and
got it, got it.
and then you use Gen AI so you can do all of it. But in terms of content, tippy top part of the funnel is I'm looking for basically organic traffic. So I can't measure a lot of what you do from the top of the funnel. The way people buy is they talk to each other. So if I need something to solve a pain point in marketing, I go talk in my marketing groups and say, hey, does anyone have a solution for this or that? And then I get like a whole host of different recommendations, and then I go look at them. And the only attribution you'll see on me on that is that I visited a website.
Yep, yep.
So content and top of the funnel activity is part of that, driving that word of mouth. Social media post, right? So you go and post something on LinkedIn that someone reads, you're not going to see attribution on that. So how you measure all of that is you look at your organic traffic over time. You can look at quality of deal through that channel, so you can follow it all the way through. So the cost to acquire the customer is intrinsic in creating the content, the lifetime value of that deal and the average deal value, and then sales velocity, how long it took for that deal to close. And then you compare sort of that funnel or pathway versus other pathways that people might take, and that informs your investment thesis.
Got it. So you mentioned that attribution is hard for top of the funnel content, right? So You mentioned that up to for 5 years ago, you've been thinking about doing podcasts,
Yeah.
and it has always been money is probably better spent elsewhere.
Yeah.
But this year, EcoView come out with the Altitude podcast, and it's
Yeah.
already in the top 5% of entrepreneurial podcasts. So major kudos to you. So what changed? What caused you to invest in podcasting?
Podcast makes a lot of sense. So it's the cheapest channel right now from an impression perspective. So all the metrics seem to line up, but there is no attribution, zero. And as a marketer, you have to think about the metrics that you're going to present to the board, especially at a PE-backed company or a VC-backed company, or even a public company. You're going to think about the metrics that you're presenting, and that's really what they're going to care about, those metrics. And those metrics are not going to include anything like podcast, because podcasts you have no attribution. So what you'll have to show is qualitatively sort of how that impacted. So you start showing through forms, how did you hear about us, or you ask your leads, how did you hear, or they inbound to you. And those are the sort of things that you can qualitatively show that show the value of it. Not to mention, it's very cheap content. So if you're feeding that top of the funnel with a content team, having your CEO talk to a top prospect or important influential person in an industry that you're trying to sell into is probably worth his hour, and so the investment in that content is pretty low, and you get to use that in a multitude of different ways.
That's awesome. All right, so now shifting gear to one of the posts that I made on LinkedIn is I talked to 40 different CMO and sales leader, and there seemed to be
This one blew up. What were your metrics on this post? I mean, when I last looked, you had like 400 comments.
apparently it's try a chord with people.
What were your metrics on that? I need to know what your analytics were on that.
Impression wise,
Yeah.
100,000.
Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, so for the people that don't know, I make a post on marketing teams and sales team. There's usually a lot of finger pointing. So marketing team create a lot of leads, and then sales team cherry picks.
Yeah.
This lead look good. I'm not gonna follow with that lead, and then your lead is no good, right? And so then the marketing team's like, I create so many leads. What happened to them? What's your thought on how sales team and marketing team can work better?
I'll just sort of regurgitate my comment on your wildly successful LinkedIn post.
Thank you.
I think that the way that we review metrics by department has created this dynamic that's unhealthy in organizations. And really what we're trying to drive is revenue. And so if you hire leaders that you trust to execute and solve the problem, really what you should be looking at is the metric versus the department that influenced it, because sales alone does not influence revenue. Marketing alone does not influence revenue. So you have to collectively have them together. And what I think is, and I didn't create this term, but a revenue team.
Okay.
And so you guys are working together on understanding, meeting weekly, if not daily, on what's coming down the pipe, what you're seeing about the quality of the pipe, and feeding that information back to marketing so they can change their positioning, add filters to the gate, or whatever it needs to happen so that the salespeople are actioning that lead as fast as possible. There's two of my favorite stats. So if you action the lead within 5 minutes, you're like 100 times more likely to close the deal. And then the secondary one is the first vendor to respond to an inquiry from a customer, theoretically looking at 3 different alternatives. The first one is like 50% more likely to close that deal. First one to respond. You need to be focused on giving sales team those cherry pick leads, so that they call them faster, so that you close them better and for higher value deals. And so without having that teamwork, that constant communication, and sort of that understanding of how all that works, and working together on achieving that goal, you're not going to win.
Yeah, 100%. And another stat to add to that is 70% of like the average wait time of a lead for a B2B company is 72 hours. So yeah, let's forget about 5 minutes. It's actually, yeah. And more than 50% B2B company don't even call the lead at all. And
is that true?
yeah, thinking about how much time you spend on getting those
I
leads
gotta
in.
go. No.
All right. Yeah, so that's the last of my questions. So how do people can learn more about you and what are you up to?
Yeah, so visit eagleview.com, learn about all the crazy innovative products that we have and we'll continue to offer throughout the next few years. It's going to be really super exciting. I'm also on LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn Marcy-Comer, so it's pretty simple to find. You should also be able to search for me, so I've optimized my keywords appropriately.
Oh my God, you need to tell me how
I
to do
will.
that.
I'll tell you that trick. But anyway, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing the bomb of knowledge, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Happy to.